We begin today the Gemara on Daf Lamed Aleph, 6 lines down from the top of the Yomid. Omar Rava said that it says in the Pasuk, L'chol aveda sechicha, that you should return all lost items of your brother. So it says L'chol, all. L'rabba is avedas karka. This comes to say, even when you see that he's going to experience a loss of his physical land, when it's a flood that will flood his land, you have to help him to save that he shouldn't have this loss. Amle Rav Chanani le so Rav Chanani says to Rava, Tanya the Messiah loch. I have a brayse that it says the point that proves the point that Rava said, and this is the brayse that was quoted here right before Rava's statement here in the beginning of the summit. The brayse said, Ra mayim sheshayt f'mubayin. A person sees that there's waters, that a flood that's coming to flood a person's property. He has the mitzvah of a shavis aveda to put up a wall, to fence it, to stop this water from flooding the property. It's exactly the point that Rava said. So Rava said about this brayse, no, this brayse is not a proof here, because if it was what it says in that brayse, loy tesai, it's not a proof to my point. Why? Because what was that brayse talking about? When there are bundles of grain in the field and you're saving the person's bundles of grain, those bundles of grain are metaltalin, they're movable items, just like any other metzia that you have to return to someone. So the brayse as well is talking about metaltalin. But the fact that a person's karka, the territory itself, that you have to save, that the brayse wasn't talking about. So the Gemara asks, if the case of that brayse is when there's bundles of grain in the field, maila memra. What's the chiddush when the brayse adds this line to say that you have to save this? It's just like any other Aveda, where the Torah says that an Aveda, that you have to save for a person. And says the Gemara, it's speaking about the grain that's still actually connected to the ground. I would think to say, since they still need the land, so therefore it has a halacha like the physical land itself. And if we're going to say that you don't have the mitzvah of a Shabbos Aveda regarding the land itself, so the wheat that's connected to the land, the mitzvah of a Shabbos Aveda doesn't apply. Kamash Malan, therefore the Brayse is saying that the mitzvah does not, that does apply for the wheat that's connected to the land. That's what the Brayse is talking about. But then Rava, though, is adding another point. Rava is saying that there is the mitzvah of l'chol avedas achicha l'rabes avedas karka. Even the aveda of the karka itself, not just the bundles of wheat or the wheat that's growing in the land. The karka itself that's going to be flooded. And going back to the...
Why isn't the Indian itself that you have to stop something from happening?
That the Gemara doesn't consider to be a chiddush. When you see that someone's thing is getting lost, over here when there's water coming and it's going to destroy the land, if you're not putting up that wall, this piece of land here is destroyed, is lost. There's a flood that's coming. That's already considered to be an aveda, and unless you put up the wall and you stop the water from flooding it. Matzah chamayr or para v'chulu. It said in the Mishnah that if a person finds a chamayr and para, the chulu over here of what the Mishnah says is very important to understand what the Gemara is going to speak about. So what the Mishnah said was, you see a donkey or a cow. So there were two parts in the Mishnah here. In the Reisha of the Mishnah it said, if you see a donkey or a cow, there are royim baderech, that they're just grazing, going along their way in the street. That's not an aveda, because it's roya, it's just walking along calmly, and on the road. The owner of this animal didn't lose it, he just let it go out and walk in the road. That's the Reisha of the Mishnah. Then in the Sefer it says, if you see a cow, Ratza bein akromim, it's running wildly between the vineyard. That's considered to be an aveda. First of all, because it's running, it's not just walking around calmly. And second of all, it's bein akromim. It's inside the vineyard where it gets hurt, so therefore you know that it got lost. That's what it said in the Mishnah. So the Gemara asks on this, Ha gufa kasha. The words of the Mishnah seem to be a contradiction here. Why? Amrit, in the Reish of the Mishnah, you say, Matzah chamayr para rayim baderech. If the donkey or cow are grazing along the way, ein zu aveda, this is not an aveda. So what do we understand from this? Rayin baderech hu d'loy hava aveda. If it's grazing along the way, then it's not lost. Ha ratza baderech, but if it would be running, even if it's in the street, not in the vineyard, but it's running, or if it's not running, but it's roya, it's going calmly, but it's ben akromim, it's in a vineyard where it can get hurt, havi aveda, then in this case it would be an aveda. In other words, the point the Gemara is being medayik from the Reish of the Mishnah is, in order to determine that something is not an aveda, there has to be 2 points that show you that it's not an aveda. Number one has to be roya dafke, Has to be just walking calmly and not in an area where you can get hurt. Has to be along the road. Then we say it's not an Aveda. But if it's missing any of these points that indicate that it's not an Aveda, we will say it's an Aveda. Whether it's running or whether it's in the vineyard calmly, it's going to be an Aveda. That's what it's mashmar from the Reish of the Mishnah. It gets hurt there. So the fact that it's getting hurt there means that the owner didn't leave it there, it just got lost there. Aim is safe, but what does it say in the safe of the Mishnah? Okay, so first the Mishnah talks about the donkey and its utensils are upside down. You see that it's lost. Then it says, Upara ratza bein akramim. When the cow is running, and where is it running? Between the vineyards. Then it is Aveda. That says that it's an Aveda. So what does it seem over here? Here it seems to say like this. Ratza bein akramim, hu davya Aveda. When do you say that it's lost? Only if you have two negatives. It's both it's running wildly, and it's running in a dangerous area where it could get hurt. Then I say that it's an Aveda. But if it's lacking any of these indications that it's an Aveda, ratza baderech. But if it's running, but it's not running in a vineyard, it's just running along the road. Or v'roye ben akramim, or if it's just grazing calmly, but it's in the vineyard, ein zu Aveda. It's not going to be an Aveda, even though there is one negative here that it's in a vineyard where it could get hurt, or it's running, but it's in the street. But one negative is not enough to determine that it's an Aveda. You have to have two negatives to determine that it's an Aveda. That's the contradiction here from the Reisha to the Seifa. Do I need two positives to say that it's not an Aveda, or do I need two negatives to say that it is an Aveda? So the Gemara answers, Omar Abaye, Yagid Olav Reyai, that its friend will say the pshat on the other case, meaning we're talking about two different cases here. We're talking about derech in the road and in the vineyard, the kerem. But the two terms that are used, the vineyard and the road, the halacha by both of them is the same, and you learn one from the other, as the Gemara explains. Tana Raya Baderech, in the Reish of the Mishnah, when it talks about the animal that's grazing calmly on the road, the loy havya aveda, that then it will not be an aveda, and v'hu adin l'raya ben akramim. Even if it's also grazing calmly in the vineyard, the halacha will be the same. Even though the Mishnah mentioned the road, but it didn't mean only the road. From that, you learn out that the same is also regarding the vineyard. The main point is the fact that it's calm, that it's not running wildly. Then, Tana Ratza ben Akramim, then in the Sefer of the Mishnah, where it says that if it's running wildly between the vineyard, that there I say that it's an Aveda, the Havya Aveda, but what din Ratza baderech? The same would be also if it's running wildly along the road, that I say that it's an Aveda. So the point of Abaye's answer is, don't focus on the difference between the vineyard or the road. Focus on that one point. The difference is whether it's running wildly or it's walking calmly, or it's just grazing along the road. That's the difference here. The fact that the Tanakh, in the Reish of the Mishnah, it talks about the road, and in the Sefer talks about the vineyard, Yagad Olav Rei, you compare the two to each other. They're not. That's not the point of the difference. So Rav asks on this pshat, if you say that you learn out the road from the vineyard, those details don't matter. The main thing is if it runs or walking. But if so, lisni kilsa v'koshke chamirta. Let the Mishnah say the bigger leniency, in other words, the bigger chiddush, that it's not an Aveda, and I would understand then, I would learn out from it, on the other case, definitely, that it's not an Aveda. And the Gemara explains what it's asking here. Lisni, let the Mishnah say in the Reisha, Ratza baderech. That if the animal is running along the road, the Havya Aveda. Let the Mishnah say that if it's running, then it's an Aveda. And where? Where is it running? It's running even on the road. Even though on the road it doesn't get hurt, but it's running, then it's an Aveda. And I would know definitely if it's running in the vineyard, where it's a place where it's not only that it's running wildly, but it can get hurt over there, I would know for sure that it would be an Aveda. But the Mishnah doesn't do that though. The Mishnah says if it's running between the vineyard, then it's an Aveda. Which makes it sound like you have to have these two negatives, that you see that it's running and it gets hurt, therefore it's an Aveda. I wouldn't learn out from this logically to say that if it's just running on the road, that it should be an Aveda. If the Mishnah wants to make the point that the main thing is just the fact that it's running, so what should it say? It should say if it's running anywhere. The main chiddush would be even if it's running just on the road, that it's an Aveda. Then I would understand on my own that if it's running in the vineyard, it's an Aveda. And the same thing also regarding the opposite, regarding when it's just grazing, walking along calmly. Let the Mishnah say the bigger chiddush. That when the behemoth is walking calmly, even if it's in a vineyard where it can get hurt, it's not an Aveda. And then it would be self-understood that if it's walking calmly along the road, where not only is it walking calmly, but it's in a place where it can get hurt, that it would not be an Aveda. So why does the Mishnah do the opposite? Why does the Mishnah say Rotza ben Akromim and Roye b'derech? Should have said the bigger Chiddush, and I would understand the other case automatically, like Abaye said. So therefore, Rava says there is actually a contradiction here in the Mishnah. And we'll have to answer that there's two different ifanim of how the animal is running. Again, the contradiction was when the animal is running. Is it an Aveda or is it not? So Rav explains, the contradiction we have, whether when the animal is running on the road, is it an Aveda or not, there's no contradiction here. It depends in what direction it's running. If the animal is running in the direction to the field or into the forest, so then you see it's running away from its owner and it's lost. Then it's going to be an Aveda. That's the diak of the Reisha of the Mishnah, where it said only if it's grazing along the road, then it's not an Aveda. But if it's running towards the forest, then you know it's an Aveda. The diak of the Sefer, where we said that if it's running on the road, it's not an Aveda. Only if it's running in the vineyard, it's an Aveda. That's when the animal is running towards the city. So you see the animal is running back towards the house of its owner. So then it's not an Aveda. And the Rava says, the contradiction that we had regarding an animal that's grazing calmly in between the vineyard, is that an Aveda or not? So from the Sefer of the Mishnah, it's mashma that it's not an Aveda, only if it's running wildly in the vineyard. From the Reisha of the Mishnah, it's mashma that if it's in the vineyard, then it can get hurt there, even if it's just grazing calmly, it is an Aveda. So this is not a contradiction either, because the two diyukim of the Mishnah are talking about two different things. Kam ba'avedas gufa. Here the Mishnah is talking about the loss of as far as the animal itself. We're trying to determine whether the animal itself is lost or not. The Gemara is going to explain this in a moment. Kam ba'avedas karka. And here it's talking about the loss that could happen by the animal that's grazing between the vineyard. It ruins the vineyard itself. The loss that it causes now to the vineyard itself. Okay, so the Gemara explains. When it says in the Reisha of the Mishnah that when the animal is grazing calmly along the road, that's not an Aveda. And from that we learned out. But if it's grazing in between the vineyard, that it is an Aveda. What is an Aveda over there? Not the loss of the animal itself. An animal that's grazing calmly in a vineyard is not an Aveda. What it was referring to is Bavedas Karka. An animal that's walking around in a vineyard, stepping over things, it ruins the property. Now, we're not talking about the loss of the animal. The diak over here is regarding the property that it ruins. So that's your mitzvah, to take the animal out from there, so the karka, the property, shouldn't get destroyed. And on the other hand, when it says in the Sefer of the Mishnah, Rotza ben Akromim, that the animal that's running between the vineyard, Havya Veda. So because it's running, therefore we see that the animal is wild and it's getting hurt, and therefore it's an Aveda. Roye ben Akromim, lo Havya Veda. But if the animal is just grazing calmly in the vineyard, it's not an Aveda, but Aveda's gufa. That's referring to the loss of the animal itself. The Rotza ben Akromim, Maskiva, when it runs between the vineyard, it gets hurt. That's why the animal itself is lost and you have to return it. But V'roye ben Akramim loy maskiva. When it's just walking calmly, grazing calmly in the vineyard, it doesn't get hurt. And over there, this is not an Aveda. So regarding the body of the animal itself, that's the diak from the Sefer of the Mishnah, that if it's grazing calmly in the vineyard, it's not an Aveda. That's the difference. But now the Gemara asks on this answer, this last point here, V'roye ben Akromim. So what you're saying is, if the animal is just grazing in the vineyard, so the animal itself is not lost, but it's causing a damage to the property itself. So nihidule miskava, true, the animal itself is not getting hurt in the vineyard because it's walking calmly. But typically mishum avedis karka, you should have the obligation to remove the animal and take it out from this property and return it to the owner anyways, because of the damage that it causes to the property itself. So what difference does it make? Either way, you're going to have to take out the animal. And says the Gemara bidekuti, it's talking about the animal that's in a vineyard of a guy. So in such a case, the fact that it's damaging the property, that's not your mitzvah of a Shavas Aveda to make sure that it doesn't damage the property, if the property itself belongs to a guy. And the animal itself is not considered to be lost because it's just walking calmly in the vineyard, so therefore you don't have to return it at all. But if it's in the property of a guy, typically mishum avedas gufa, so then shouldn't we say then that the animal itself is actually lost? If an animal goes into the property of a guy, what's the guy going to do? The guy sees that this animal is destroying his property, he's going to steal it or kill it, or so the animal itself now is in danger. So it is an Aveda here as well. The Dilma they'll kill this animal, the Goyim. And it says the Gemara, Ba'asra, the Masru, V'hada Kotli. It's in a place where you know that the guy that sees this animal on his property is not going to just go ahead and kill the animal. He's going to warn the owner first, get your animal out of here, and only then, if the owner doesn't listen, then he'll kill the animal. So the fact that the animal is found there in this place is not, it's not lost. In fact, the Gemara, but Vidilma Asraba, when you see this animal that's lost here in the vineyard of a guy, maybe the owner got a warning already. And therefore, it's a danger that this animal is going to be killed, being in the property of a guy. So you should take it out and return it to the owner. That says the Gemara, if the case here is that the owner already got a warning, and nevertheless the owner was not careful, did not go and remove himself this animal, so this is something that the owner himself is giving up on. He leaves it there, he doesn't care about it. If the owner, if a person himself gives up on something and just leaves it there, you don't have the mitzvah of Shabbos Aveda. You don't have the mitzvah to return it to him, you can just leave it there. Going back to the Mishnah said regarding Shabbos Aveda, Hechzira, Ubarcha, you returned the animal once to the owner, and then it ran away again. Echzira, Ubarcha, returned it and ran away again. V'chulu, the Mishnah says, as many times as it runs away, you have the mitzvah of Shabbos Aveda again and again. And the Mishnah said, you learn it out from the pasuk, Hoshev Teshivim. You have to return it as many times as it runs away from the owner. So one of the Rabbanan said to Rava, when we learn it out, the Mishnah says we learn it from this pasuk Hashev Teshivim, Hashev Chadazimne. Why do you say you have to return it many times? Maybe Hashev means return it the first time, and then Teshivim, when it says another expression of Teshivim, return it again. Treizimni just means the second time you return it. But if it happens again and again, who says you have to keep on returning it to the owner? Amalei, so Rava explained, the drasha wasn't from the double lashon there, from the extra word teshivim. Hashev afila kuf pamim mashma. When the Torah says return a lost object to its owner, that means as many times as you have to. Hashev means return it. Why should there be any limitation? Every time it runs away and it's lost from its owner, you have to return it. So that we understand already just from the word hashev. Now when it says the extra word teshivim, it's coming to teach me a different din. I would think when you return it to the owner, where do you have to return it to? You have to return it into his house, or leginasai, into his garden, or lecharvasai, if this owner owns an area which has ruins in it, and you return it there, which is a private place. So let me read this again. I would think that when you return it, you only could return it to his home. If you're returning it outdoors to his garden or to a place of ruins, how do I know that that's sufficient? That you returned it to the owner, this aveda to the owner. So here the extra word is saying that you don't have to return it into his house. You can return it to any other area outdoors, and that's good enough. That's what the extra word teaches. Now the Gemara clarifies what exactly are we adding here by saying that this is good enough to return it outdoors. Hey Chidami, what's the case here? If the garden, this outdoor area, is a guarded, fenced-in area, it's the pshita. It's obvious that it's good. It's just as good as returning it to his home. You don't need a special pasuk to say that this is good enough. If it's an area which is not guarded, so then amai. Why would you say that you learn from the pasuk that this is good enough to return it? If it's not a guarded place, you return it to someone, a lost object, and you drop it down in a place which is totally exposed and open, and anyone else is going to take it, and it's basically still lost. You didn't really return it to him. And says the Gemara, really, the drasha we're learning out from the extra word teshivim is that you return it to the owner in an outdoor area, in a place which is guarded. Now, but the chiddush of here of this drasha is as follows: the loy beinon das bailim. You don't have to have the owner that's there, and you're telling him, "Here, I'm returning you the cow. Protect your cow, take care of it, because I'm returning it to you." You don't have to have the owner there where you're letting him know about this. Okay, the Rabbi Loza, as Rabbi Loza explained this. The Rabbi Loza said, "Hakel tzrichin das bailim." Anybody that's returning something to an owner, you have to have the awareness of the owner. You have to let him know that you're returning it. And this refers to a ganev, a gazlan that's returning, or a shaymer that's giving back something that he was guarding to the owner. You have to let him know. If you don't let him know, so then it gets lost afterwards, it dies, or it gets stolen, the owner is going to say, "I never knew you returned it to me. I didn't know I have to take care of it." Chutz ma'ashavas aveda. Besides by ashavas aveda, here that's the chiddush of teshivim. Shatayra ripsa ashavas harbe. Torah wrote an extra lashon of teshivim to say that whether you return it into his house and he knows, even if you don't, doesn't matter. It's returned to him. That's the drasha from teshivim. Okay, now since the Gemara brought up over here the pshat of this double lashon of Hashiv Teshive, the entire next Gemara here is going to bring many places in Torah where it uses this double lashon, similar to this, and what exactly do we learn from the double lashon? So the Gemara begins. Shalach to shalach. It says by the mitzvah of shiluach hakan, where you have to first send away the mother before you take the chicks. So it says the double lashon as well that you should send away the mother. So shalach chodezimne. So the Gemara says, I would think that maybe I should darshan as follows: that the first time it says shalach, you send away the mother once, but if this mother is very stubborn and it comes right back, so then the Torah says to shalach, send it away again. Treizimne. It's enough you send away twice, and after that, if the mother still comes back, you can take the chicks. That's how I would think to darshan. But this can't be true. Rashi here brings, the Mishnah in Chulin says that you have to send away the mother again and again, even 100 times, and only when the mother's gone could you take the chicks. So how do we darshan the pasuk here? So Amalei, so he explained to him and said, no, shalach afilu meipam. Like we said before, when the Torah says just once, shalach, the Torah is saying send away. That means as many times as it takes to send, you have to send away even 100 times. Mashma. Now, teshalach, the extra lashon of, and it says teshalach, send away again, what it's teaching me is as follows. I would think if you want to take the chicks for yourself, to eat, for any permissible thing, then you have the mitzvah to send away the mother. However, in a case where you're taking these little birds because you want to use it for a mitzvah, Rashi brings, what's the example of the mitzvah? When you have to have these birds to be mitayr a mitzvah. So that's a mitzvah. Maybe in such a case when you're taking these chicks, you don't have to send away the mother. Talmud Leima, Teshalach, Mikol Mokim, that's why the Torah says, Teshalach, even for the purpose of taking them for a mitzvah, you have to send away the mother as well. One of the Rabbanan asked Rava, similar, let's say, this is the pasuk of Hecheyach Techiach, to rebuke your friend. So it uses the double lashon as well. So maybe I should say, Hecheyach is Chodesimna. You rebuke him once. And then Techiach is Treizimna. It's the second time. That's it. And after that, if the person is not listening to you, there's no Inyan, there's no mitzvah to go and give him musar to bring him to do Torah mitzvahs. So just twice. So Rava said no. The Hecheyach is even 100 times to teach another Yid, to show him how to do a mitzvah. So the Rebbe said this is one of the sources for the fact that a Yid has an obligation to go and be mezaka another Yid with a mitzvah. To go on mivtzayim, to help another Yid put on tefillin, it's the mitzvah of Hecheyach Techiach, and that's even 100 times. Mashma. Now, when it says Techiach, when it says the double lashon, what is it coming to teach? Because I would think that it's only a teacher that's educating and teaching his students. He has the obligation to teach them and to educate them and explain them even 100 times. Talmud l'rav minayin, but a student that sees something that his teacher does that's inappropriate or that he could teach him, how do I know that the student also has an obligation to show his teacher in the right way and with proper respect? How do we know that he has to rebuke his teacher as well? Talmud loima, Hecheyach, Techiach, the double lashon says that even a student to teach his teacher. Another mitzvah in the Torah where it uses the double lashon, Ozev Tazev. Ozev Tazev Imai, this is the mitzvah, which we're going to learn here later in the next blot, the mitzvah of Prike. When you see someone's donkey that's loaded and the animal is lying under its load, you have to unload it in order for the animal to be able to get up. Ozev Tazev Imai. So it uses a double lashon here as well. What's the double lashon? Because I would think that this mitzvah is only if the owner is there with you and he's helping you. If the owner is not with you and he's not helping you, how do you know that you have the mitzvah to help and to remove the packages of this donkey? Talmud Leima, Ozev Tazev. That's what we call Mokim. It says a double lashon that even then you're obligated as well. There's a similar mitzvah, Hokim Tokim. This is the mitzvah of Te'ina, to load up the donkey. When a person has a hard time loading up the donkey, so here it uses as well the double lashon to load it up. Why is it saying this double lashon? So again, the same point. I would think the mitzvah is only if the owner is there with you. Shein balavim, if the owner is not there with you, minayin. How do you know that you have to still go and load up the donkey? Talmud leima, Hokim Tokim. It says the double lashon as well, Mikol Mokim, even if the owner is not there. Now the Gemara asks, why does the Torah have to say both the mitzvah to unload this donkey that is suffering under this heavy load, and why does the Torah also have to write separately the mitzvah to help a person load his donkey? According to Rashi, the Gemara here is asking a general question regarding these two mitzvahs of Prike and Te'ina that are very similar. Why did the Torah have to write both? If it would write one, that you have to help a person with his packages, with his load on the animal, I would understand the other, whether loading or unloading. Why does it have to write both? According to Taisvis and other Rishonim, the Gemara is not asking a general question regarding these two mitzvahs, it's asking specifically regarding the Chiddush we said here, that the mitzvah applies even when the owner is not present and helping you. Why did it have to say that Chiddush regarding both of these mitzvahs? So the Gemara explains, Tzrichi. It's necessary to say both of them. Because of Rachmana Prike, if the Torah would say the mitzvah of unloading this donkey, Hava Mina, I would say the reason why here the Torah is giving you this mitzvah and the Torah is being more machmir with this mitzvah is Mishum De'ik Tzar Balachayim. Because over here, there's also the animal that's suffering. And therefore the Torah is obligating you. And also, V'ki Chesar Kiss, there's the loss of the person, that his animal is getting damaged. His animal could even die here maybe. So that's why you have the mitzvah. But in the case where you have a mitzvah to help a person load his animal, the animal is not suffering here. And and it's not that the animal that's under this load that's getting damaged and can die. So therefore, maybe in such a case, I would say there's no mitzvah. On the other hand, says the Gemara, if the Torah would say just the mitzvah that you have to load the packages on this donkey. So once I know that you have to load, shouldn't it be self-understood that you have to unload? Where there's tzar balachayim and the animal could get damaged. I would think the reason is mishum de bischar, because there's an opinion later, as we'll see in the next blot, when it comes to the mitzvah of te'ina, there is a mitzvah of te'ina to help a person load his packages, but you can charge him for this. The mitzvah is only with schar. So there, it's because you're getting paid, so that's why you do this mitzvah. Aval prike de bechinam, but to say that you're obligated to unload an animal to help a person when the animal is suffering and the person could lose his animal, there the mitzvah is even for free. How would I know that they have that mitzvah? I would say maybe you're not obligated. Therefore the Torah writes the mitzvah of prike to unload, that this you have to do even free of pay. This is according to one opinion, but the Gemara says, "Well, Rab Shimon, the Omar." But according to Rab Shimon, that says later here that af te'ina bechinam, just like when you unload the animal and when you load it as well, this is a mitzvah that should be done free of charge. There's no difference in as far as that is concerned. So then, ma'ya kilameima. How are you going to explain after the Torah says that you have the mitzvah to load the animal? I should understand on my own that you have the mitzvah to unload. And says the Gemara, Rab Shimon loy misaimi kroi. According to Rab Shimon, the answer is the language of the psukim is not clear. You can't say the Torah should write one and not the other, because what does it say in the Torah? It says ozev ta'zivimai and it says hakim takim. It's not clear whether it's talking about prike or te'ina. If it would only say one, I would say it's only referring to prike, to unload the animal. But te'ina, I wouldn't know. To load the animal where there's no tzar balachayim and there's no chesar and kiss, I wouldn't know that. The Torah had to write both, and now I understand that it includes both prike and te'ina. Now the Gemara goes on further and says, after we see that there's this mitzvah to help a person with his animal that's getting crushed under a load, and he's going to have a chesar and kiss, and to help a person load up his animal. Why is it necessary for the Torah to write the mitzvah of prike and te'ina, and also to write the mitzvah of Hashavas Aveda? So again, according to Rashi, the Gemara is asking over here b'chlal, when you get to the entire mitzvah of Hashavas Aveda. The way Rashi explains this is, once you see the Torah writes, you have to help a person with his packages where his animal can get ruined or even die. So you see that the Torah is telling you when another person's animal is about to die, you have to save his money, help him with his money. So I would understand on my own that the same thing applies regarding a lost object. That another Yid's money was lost, that you have to help him and give it back to him. That's Rashi's shot. But according to the other Rishonim, as I mentioned before, the Gemara is just discussing over here regarding this detail of helping a person when the owner is not there. If the Torah tells you that you have to load or unload the animal when the owner is not there, so I understand that the same applies regarding an Aveda, which is something that's lost and the owner is not there. Says the Gemara, no tzrichi, it's necessary to say separately the mitzvah of Hashavas Aveda. If the Torah would say the mitzvah of prike te'ina when you're loading and unloading the animal, I would say the reason is because of there, mishum tzayda the mara isa. The owner over here has a pain from this. He can't do the work himself. He can't load or unload the animal himself. So he himself is in pain. And also there's also the pain of the animal that's suffering over here. But in the case of a lost object, where the owner is the one that's suffering, that he lost something valuable, but there's no tsar of the object itself, so in such a case, I would say, that the mitzvah of Hashavas Aveda, the Torah does not obligate you to return it if there's no suffering of the object itself. Therefore, the Torah has to say the mitzvah of Hashavas Aveda. On the other hand, via Shmin and Aveda, if would only say the mitzvah of Hashavas Aveda, I would say Mishum de Lesser Lamar Bada, because the owner is not available there to bring his Aveda back to himself. He lost it. So in such a case, when it's totally lost, he's at a loss. So you have to help him out. Aval Hani Tarti, the Isa Lamar Bada, but by the case of Prika and Tina, where the owner is here, so he, even though he's having a hard time, but the owner himself is here, so maybe in such a case, Eimeloi, I would say that you don't have to help him. So therefore, Tzricha, the Torah has to say that in this case, you do have to help out the owner with this mitzvah. Okay, now the Gemara goes on to another pasuk where it uses a double expression. Mois Yuma Samake. This is talking about at Etzeyach, a murderer, which is Chayiv Misa, and it says in the Torah the double lashon of Mois Yumas. So the reason for the double lashon is, I would think that you have to give him the death that the Torah says, which is with a sayif, with a sword. But how do you know if you can't give him the punishment? So then you can kill this murderer with any misa, not only sayif. So therefore the Torah says the double lashon that you have to give him misa in any way possible. Another pasuk, hake take. So the pasuk over here is talking about, one second, the hake take is talking about the Irani Dachas, where the people of the Irani Dachas, which is a city where the city all served Avodah Zarah, so you have to kill them. So it uses a double lashon as well. I would think that it's only regarding the actual punishment that it says there in the Torah. The Misa. The Misa of Irani Dachas is, what's the Misa of Irani Dachas? I don't remember. Is it also Saif? So, Minayin, She'imiyat Yachala, Misa Makar, Ksuv Ben, Shater Shoyla, Kaisim Bachala Kar, Shater Yachal. How do I know if you can't give them that Misa that the Torah says, so you can give them any other Misa possible? Again, this is the double lashon here. Another case where it says a double lashon in the Torah, and this is a pasuk Hoshev Tashiv, where it talks about a mashkin. When a person has a collateral from the borrower, and the Torah says that you have a collateral that he needs nighttime, a pillow, a blanket that he needs, so when it comes night, you have to return to him this collateral. And it uses a double lashon, Hoshev Tashiv. Ainly Elo, why does it say the double lashon? Because I would think that this is maybe only Elo Shemishkanoi B'Rishus Bezdin. When you took this mashkin from this borrower with the permission of the Bezdin, you came to the Bezdin, you complained that this person is not paying you, and then with the Rishus of the Bezdin, they took this mashkin from him. So in such a case, you have it by day, but you have to return it to him when he needs it by night. But Mishkan Leshalei B'Rishus Bezdin, if you took this mashkin without the Rishus of the Bezdin, you just went and grabbed it on your own, Minayin, how do I know that still the Torah is obligating you that you have to return it to him at night? Talmud Leima, Hoshev, Toshev, Mikol Mokim. That's why it says the double lashon that you always have to return it to him when he needs it at night. A similar thing it says regarding a mashkin, in another place in the Torah it says Chovel Tachpel, which is also a mashkin that you take, a collateral that a lender takes from the borrower. Why does it say the double lashon? So here it says the same thing. I would think this only applies that you return it to him when it was done with permission. If you're taking it without the rishus of the bezdin, how do I know you have to return it to him when he needs it? That you have to return it to him. Now the Gemara explains, these two psukim that seem to be saying the same point regarding a mashkin that you return it to him when he needs it. Why is it repeating it? The answer is Chad L'Ksos Yaim. The pasuk of Chabal Tachpoil is talking about a garment that a person wears by day, and that you can keep by night, but you have to make it available for him by day. That's the pasuk Chabal Tachpoil. And the Chad L'Ksos Laila, the pasuk of Hoshev Tashiv, where in that pasuk it says you return it to him that he should be able to use it to sleep with. V'shachav, it says in that pasuk that he can sleep with what he needs by night. That's talking about Ksos Laila, that to return it to him what he can use, what he has, what he needs to use by night. Another pasuk where it says a double lashon, and this is the pasuk regarding tzedakah. Pasayach tiftach. The pasuk says, "Open your hands and give tzedakah." Ainli elo. Why does it say the double lashon? Because I would think elo laniya ircha. Your obligation to give tzedakah is only for poor people that are in your city. Laniya iracheres minayin. How do I know that you have to give tzedakah even for people that are in a different city as well? Talmud Leima pasayach tiftach mikol makim. So the Torah says a double lashon that you give it even to people that are in any other place in any other city as well. Another place where it talks about, there it's in the same parsha, Nosin Titein, here it's talking about a person that you give tzedakah to him. So why does it say the double lashon? You would think that you only give tzedakah if you're able to give to him a large amount. If you're only able to give him something very small, how do I know that you have the mitzvah there as well? That if you can't give him a large amount, whatever you give him, even a tiny amount of tzedakah, that's also a matana. Another pasuk where it says a double lashon hanik tanik. This is the halacha of the eved ivri that leaves his master, and you have to give him gifts when he leaves his master. So it uses the double lashon for the gifts that you have to give this eved ivri. Ainly yellow. So the reason is because I would think when you have to give him gifts, only shen is barach habayis beglolai. If this is a slave that worked for his master and he actually brought a big blessing into the house of the master by the work that he did, so then you have to show him this appreciation and give him the gifts when he gets freed. But if it's a case where there was no bracha that came into the home because of the work of this slave, maybe in such a case, you don't have to give him any gifts when he leaves. So minayin, that even in such a case, the Torah is saying that you have to give him gifts. The Torah says that even in such a case, you have to give him gifts as well. That's according to one opinion. But Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah the Amar, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah's opinion is, if the house of the master got blessed because of the work of this eved, then manikin. Then when he leaves, you have to show him the extra appreciation and give him these gifts. But if the house was not blessed because of the work of this slave, you don't have to give him these gifts. So Tanik Lamali, the extra word of Tanik, what is it coming to teach? So Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah will tell you about that. Dibra Torah Kaloshim b'nei Yadam. That the extra expression of Hanik Tanik, we don't expound it to darshan anything. It's just the Torah speaking the way people speak that use this double language. Another pasuk it says Have Tavitenu. This is a pasuk where it speaks about a person that does not want to accept any tzedakah. So what do? Have Tavitenu means you should lend him money. So what's the double lashon here? Says the Gemara, I would think that the Havet Havitenu is referring to a person that has no money, and he's not ready to accept tzedakah from you for his parnasa. So the Torah is saying that you have to feed him. You should give him a loan even if when he doesn't have, that is. Now, the Torah says lend him the money. Now, yeshloi, in a case though where this person has money of his own, but he's saving his money in the bank account and he's not feeding his family, he doesn't want to use his money. So in such a case, you would say to yourself, why should I feed this person that has money if he doesn't want to use his own money? The Torah says, even a person like this, which is a miser and is not using his own money, you should go and lend him money that he should be able to feed his family. That's according to one opinion. But Rab Shimon, however, Rab Shimon disagrees with this. Rab Shimon that says, the Omar, a person that has money on his own and he's not interested in providing for himself or his family, in such a case, we don't have to take care of him. So Tavitenu Lamali, the double lashon of the pasuk where it says Tavitenu, why is it using this double lashon? So the Gemara says, Dibra Torah Kaloshim b'nei Yadam. According to Rab Shimon, there's no extra drasha from this word. It's just the Torah speaking in the language, the way people speak. Taisvus here clarifies, even though the Gemara here uses this expression of Dibra Torah Kaloshim b'nei Yadam, it doesn't mean that according to these two opinions here, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah and Rab Shimon, all the drashas we said before don't apply because of Dibra Torah Kaloshim b'nei Yadam. It's only regarding these two places where Rab Shimon and Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah held that there's a raya in the psukim their gufa. Taisus brings there's a raya from the psukim gufa that you see that you can't darshan the redundancy of the words, that we must say Dibra Torah Kaloshim b'nei Yadam. But regarding all the other cases, they agree that we do expound the double lashon that the Torah says. Okay, let's learn one more small piece. Going back to what it said in the Mishnah. Haya batal minasela, a person that's taking off from his work, and his work he earns a sela, and he's batal by going and returning this aveda. Lo yoymar loy, he can't say to the owner of this aveda that he's returning it to, ten li sela, pay me the value of my work that I lost out on, that sela. Ella rather noisin loischarei kepoil. He just kapayel batal. He gives him just the value of a worker for the work that he did here. Okay, so now the Gemara explains what exactly the Mishnah is saying. So Tanan or Tanya, we learned in the Braise, noisin loischarei kapayel batal. He's paid like a payel, like a worker that is taking a day off. That's what this person that took off from his work and is tending to someone's aveda gets paid. So the Gemara asks on this, my kapoil bottle. What does it mean that he gets schar like a poil bottle? So the Gemara understands what that means is that he gets paid like a worker that took a day off from his work, and on that day that he takes a day off, so he gets paid maybe a tiny drop because he's still hired and he's working every day, but he takes one day off and he's a poil bottle. He's not working at all on that day. That's what this person that's doing this work to return the Aveda gets paid for. So the Gemara says, the question really, my kapel bottle, what the Gemara really is asking over here is, why should he just get paid like a poil that took a day off from his work? But he's doing something. He took off from his work and he's returning an Aveda. So he should get paid more than a person that took a day off from his work. Amar Abaye, so Abaye explains what kapayil bottle means is as follows. Kapayil bottle shall oisa malacha the bottle mina. If this person has a job, and he has a very high paying, good job, and he takes off from that job, and he goes and does this simple job to return the Aveda. Just like he would be paid in a situation where he had a very high paying job, and he took off from that high paying job to do a simple work like returning the Aveda, so he would get, let's say, half or a fraction of that pay, but he would get paid for a simple job. So too, the poil bottle over here means not that we pay him like a person that totally took off that day. He gets paid for doing the simple job of returning the Aveda, and what he would get paid for such a simple job instead of the more high-paying job that he has. That's the taich of poil bottle, according to this is Rashi's prat of here in the Gemara. Okay.
Rabbi.